I'm going to grant you 3 wishes." The words hung in the sterile hospital air. Angela Trent, 17 years old and dying of leukemia, stared at the billionaire standing beside her bed. Gerard Moore had just paid $400,000 for her treatment, pocket change for a man worth $3.2 billion. 3 wishes, he repeated. Anything I can make happen with my resources. But you have to think carefully. Most people waste potential on short-term thinking. Angela's mother gasped. This was beyond generous. College tuition? A dream trip? Connections in a medical field? The possibilities were endless for a girl who'd been given a second chance at life. 3 months later, Angela walked out of that hospital in remission. She called Gerard to make her first wish. They met at a coffee shop. She looked healthy, alive, full of hope. Gerard leaned back, curious about what she'd chosen. "I'm ready for my first wish," Angela said. "I'm listening." She took a deep breath. "I wish for you to spend 1 full day living on minimum wage." Gerard stared at her, genuinely stunned. Of all the things she could have asked for anything in the world, she'd asked for this. "You could ask for almost anything," he said slowly. "I'm asking for this." And with those 4 words, Angela Trent began the systematic destruction of everything Gerard Moore thought he knew about success, power, and what it meant to be truly wealthy. What happened next would cost him $300 million, but it would save his soul. Welcome to Kindness Arena. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and unseen connections that change lives, please help me prove something wrong. My mother said I wouldn't even reach 1,000 subscribers. Help me show her that stories like this matter and deserve to be heard by hitting the subscribe button, liking the video, comment your thoughts, where you're watching from, and share it with someone who needs it to stay motivated. Your support keeps these powerful, true stories alive. Gerard Moore stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, surveying Manhattan like a king overlooking his domain. At 42, he had everything. A tech empire worth $3.2 billion, properties on 3 continents, and a reputation for ruthless business acumen that made competitors tremble. His reflection in the glass showed a man in an impeccable Brioni suit, silver threading through his dark hair at just the right places to suggest wisdom rather than age. "Mr. Moore," his assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Your housekeeper, Mrs. Trent, is here. She says it's urgent." Gerard frowned. Celine Trent had worked in his Fifth Avenue residence for nearly 5 years, a quiet, efficient woman who managed his household with invisible precision. She'd never once come to his office. "Send her in." The woman who entered looked smaller than he remembered, her shoulders hunched beneath a worn coat that had seen better years. Her face, usually composed, was blotchy with recent tears. "Mrs. Trent." He gestured to a chair, his tone softening despite himself. "What's wrong?" She twisted her hands together, words tumbling out in a rush. "I'm so sorry to bother you, Mr. Moore. I know you're busy. I didn't know where else to turn. It's my daughter, Angela. She's 17, and the doctors say she has leukemia." The words hung in the air like smoke. Gerard had been preparing to write a check. That's what this was, wasn't it? Another problem money could solve. But something in Celine's face stopped him. "Go on," he said quietly. "She needs treatment. Experimental treatment. Our insurance won't cover it, and I've sold everything I have. I've worked 3 jobs for months, but it's not enough. It's never enough." Her voice cracked. "She's such a good girl, Mr. Moore. Straight A's, wants to be a doctor. She volunteers at the Children's Hospital even now, even when she's so sick herself. I need help." Gerard found himself looking at this woman, really looking, perhaps for the first time. He saw the exhaustion etched in every line of her face, the desperation in her eyes, and something else, a fierce, unbreakable love. "How much?" he asked. $400,000 for the full treatment course. The number came out as a whisper. "I know it's impossible. I know I can't ask this of you, but I thought, maybe you might know someone or some foundation." Gerard pulled out his phone and made a call. "Matheson, I need you to wire $400,000 to." He glanced at Celine. "Which hospital?" Her hands flew to her mouth. "Mr. Moore, I can't. That's too much. I could never repay you. Consider done." He waved off her protests. But there's a condition. Her hope visibly dimmed, replaced by wariness. In Gerard's world, there was always a price. I want to meet your daughter, he said. Tomorrow. At the hospital. Columbia Presbyterian Hospital's oncology wing smelled of antiseptic and quiet suffering. Gerard felt deeply uncomfortable as he followed Celine through the corridors, past rooms where people fought invisible battles. He couldn't remember the last time he'd been in a hospital. His own parents had died when he was young, a car accident, and he'd built walls so high that loss couldn't touch him again. She doesn't know I came to you, Celine said softly as they approached room 547. She'd be mortified. Angela's proud, independent. Gift from her father, God rest his soul. The girl in the bed didn't look sick at first glance. She was sitting up, a laptop balanced on her knees, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. But Gerard could see the pallor of her skin, the slight tremor in her hands, the medical equipment surrounding her like a mechanical forest. Mom! Angela's face lit up before shifting to confusion as she noticed Gerard. Who's? Angela, this is Mr. Moore. My employer. Celine's voice was steady, rehearsed. He's agreed to help with your treatment. The girl's eyes, remarkable eyes, Gerard noticed, intelligent and searching, moved from her mother to him and back again. What did you promise him? The question was direct, almost accusatory. Gerard found himself surprised into a laugh. Your mother promised me nothing, he said, moving closer. I'm helping because I can. Nobody helps for free. Angela closed her laptop. Especially not billionaires. Angela. Celine looked horrified, but Gerard held up a hand. She's right to be skeptical. He pulled up a chair, studying the girl with new interest. You're smart. That's good. So let me be honest. I'm helping because your mother asked, and because I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. What's $400,000 to me? Less than what I spent on my car. That's obscene, Angela said flatly. It is, he agreed. But it's also reality, and right now, that reality means you get to live. Unless your pride is worth more than your life. They stared at each other, and Gerard saw something in this teenager that he recognized. A refusal to back down, a core of steel beneath the fragile exterior. Angela looked at her mother, saw the hope and fear warring in her face, and her expression softened. Thank you, Mr. Moore, she said finally. I accept your help, and I will pay you back. Every cent, even if it takes my whole life. We'll see, Gerard said, standing. But something made him pause at the door. Your mother says you want to be a doctor. I did. Angela's hand drifted to the 4 in her arm. Now I just want to survive long enough to graduate high school. The resignation in her voice bothered him more than it should have. Gerard Moore didn't get emotionally involved. Emotional involvement led to vulnerability, and vulnerability led to loss. But he found himself saying, I'll make you a deal. Angela raised an eyebrow, a gesture that somehow made her look years older. Another deal? Is this how billionaires operate? Everything's transactional. Everything is transactional, Gerard replied. The question is whether the transaction is fair. Here's mine. I'm paying for your treatment, no strings attached, but I'm also going to make you an offer. He sat back down, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. I believe in investing in potential. You're 17, brilliant according to your mother, and you have dreams beyond survival. So here's what I propose. I'll grant you 3 wishes. Real wishes. Things I can actually make happen with my resources and connections. Celine gasped. Mr. Moore, you've already. This is between me and Angela, he said gently, not taking his eyes off the girl. 3 wishes. But there are rules. They can't be for money directly. I'm not an ATM. They have to be for experiences, opportunities, or specific help for yourself or others. And you have to really think about them. I've seen too many people waste potential on short-term thinking. Angela was silent for a long moment. Why would you do this? Honestly, I'm not entirely sure. Gerard surprised himself with his candor. Maybe because I've spent 20 years building an empire and I've forgotten what it's like to dream about anything other than the next acquisition. Maybe because I see something in you that reminds me of myself before I became. He gestured at his expensive suit. This. A soulless corporate robot, Angela suggested. but there was a hint of a smile. Exactly that. He stood again. Think about it. You have until you're well enough to leave this hospital. Then tell me your 3 wishes. As he walked toward the elevator, Celine caught up with him. Mr. Moore, I don't know what to say. This is beyond generous, but Angela, she's not like other teenagers. She thinks deeply about things. Whatever she asks for, it won't be simple. Good, Gerard said. I'm counting on it. 3 months later, Angela Trent walked out of Columbia Presbyterian in remission. The experimental treatment had worked beyond even the doctor's optimistic projections. Gerard had followed her progress through weekly reports from Celine, but he'd deliberately stayed away, giving the girl space to heal without the weight of obligation. It was Angela who called him, using the private number he'd left with her mother. Mr. Moore? It's Angela Trent. I'm ready to make my first wish. They met at a coffee shop in Greenwich Village, Angela's choice. She looked different, healthier, her skin glowing, her eyes bright. But there was something else, a gravity that hadn't been there before. Surviving death did that to people, Gerard knew. You look well, he said as she sat down. I feel like I've been given a second chance. She wrapped her hands around a mug of tea, which is why I've thought carefully about this. My first wish. I'm listening. Angela took a breath. I wish for you to spend 1 full day living on minimum wage. Gerard stared at her. Of all the things he'd imagined, college tuition, a trip somewhere exotic, connections in the medical field, this hadn't even made the list. I'm sorry, what? You heard me. Angela's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly. I want you to experience what it's like to live on what you pay your lowest wage employees. For 24 hours, you have to survive on what someone making $15 an hour would make in a day. That's $120 before taxes, so about $100 take home. You can't use your credit cards, your name, your connections. Just you, and $100 for food, transportation, everything. Gerard sat back, genuinely stunned. That's your wish? You could ask for almost anything. I'm asking for this. Angela leaned forward. Do you know what my mom makes working for you? Do you know that she's worked for you for 5 years and never taken a vacation because she couldn't afford to? Do you know that before you paid for my treatment, we had to choose between my medication and keeping the heat on? I pay competitive wages, Gerard said, feeling defensive for the first time in years. Competitive with what? Other billionaires who've never had to think about whether they can afford eggs. Angela's voice rose slightly before she caught herself. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to attack you. But you asked why I'd wish for this. It's because I think you're not a bad person, Mr. Moore. I think you're just so far removed from how most people live that you've forgotten what it's like. And I think if you remembered, you might make different choices. The words hit Gerard like a physical blow. He thought of his penthouse, his car, his closet full of suits that cost more than some people made in months. When was the last time he'd thought about the price of anything? You want to teach me a lesson, he said slowly. I want to give you a gift, Angela corrected. Empathy. Understanding. The same gift you gave me, a chance to see the world differently. Gerard was quiet for a long moment. He could refuse. He could say this wasn't the spirit of the agreement, that wishes should be about receiving, not giving back, but something in Angela's earnest face, in the challenge she'd laid down, sparked something in him he'd thought long dead. Curiosity. One day, he said, $100. When? Tomorrow. Angela smiled. I've already planned it. My mom's day off. I'm going to show you how she lives when she's not cleaning your penthouse. Gerard woke at 5:30 a.m. to pounding on his penthouse door, not the polite knock of his staff, but an insistent hammering. He opened it to find Angela standing there in worn jeans and a hoodie, holding a McDonald's bag. Breakfast, she announced, pushing past him. $1 menu. You've got $97 left. You're serious about this? Completely. Get dressed. Not that. She pointed at the designer casual where he'd pulled out. Something old. Something you wouldn't mind getting dirty. 20 minutes later, Gerard found himself on the subway for the first time in over a decade, pressed between a man who smelled of cigarettes and a woman shouting into her phone. Angela had taken his wallet, his phone, everything except a flip phone she'd provided for emergencies, and 5 $20 bills. First stop, the grocery store, Angela said as they surfaced in Queens. My mom shops here. You're going to buy food for dinner tonight. The grocery store was an assault on Gerard's senses, harsh fluorescent lights, cramped aisles, prices that seemed impossibly low and simultaneously unattainable. Angela handed him a list: chicken, rice, beans, vegetables, milk. That's easy, Gerard said, grabbing a cart. It wasn't easy. The chicken he reached for was $12 a pound. Too expensive, Angela said. My mom buys the family pack on sale. $5.99. There. She pointed to a package that looked like it contained an entire farm's worth of meat. The vegetables were bruised. The milk was nearly expired. By the time they reached the checkout, Gerard had spent 40 minutes selecting items he would have previously purchased without a second thought, and the total came to $28.47. That leaves you $68.53, Angela said as they loaded bags onto the bus. Transportation back will be $5.50. That's $63.03 for the rest of the day. They rode the bus for 45 minutes to reach Celine's apartment in the Bronx. Gerard had never been here, had never thought to ask where his housekeeper lived. The building was old but clean, the hallways narrow and dim. Celine's apartment was a studio, maybe 400 square feet. A pull-out couch doubled as her bed. A small alcove held a kitchenette. One corner was curtained off, Angela's room, she explained, barely large enough for a twin bed and a desk. This is where we've lived for 8 years, Angela said softly. After my dad died, this was what we could afford. Gerard stood in the center of the tiny space, his 6'2" frame seeming enormous. His master bathroom was larger than this entire apartment. I didn't know, he said. How could you? Angela's voice wasn't accusatory, just sad. You live in a different world. That's the point. They spent the day in that different world. Angela took him to the laundromat where Celine spent 3 hours every Sunday because the apartment building's machines were always broken. Cost $8. Lunch was dollar pizza, $3 for both of them. They walked to save bus fare, Gerard's feet aching in shoes he'd owned for years, but never actually walked more than a block in. In the afternoon, Angela introduced him to her neighbor, Mrs. Chun, who worked 2 jobs and still needed food stamps to feed her 3 children. To Marcus, a teenager who'd aged out of foster care and was trying to finish high school while living in youth shelter. To the bodega owner who extended credit to neighbors when they came up short at the end of the month, keeping careful tallies in a worn notebook. These are the people who make your world run, Angela said as they sat on a bench in a small park, watching the sun set. The cleaners, the delivery drivers, the security guards. They work hard, harder than you've ever worked, and most of them will never get ahead. Gerard was quiet. In his pocket, he had $39.53 left, a day's wages. In his regular life, he'd spent more than that on coffee this morning from his private espresso machine. What do you want to learn from this? He asked finally. Angela turned to look at him. I want you to remember. Tomorrow, you'll go back to your penthouse. You'll wear your expensive suits and make your million-dollar deals. But I want you to remember what it feels like to count every dollar. To choose between 2 necessities because you can't afford both. To be tired, always tired, because rest is a luxury. And then what? Gerard's voice was rough. What am I supposed to do with that memory? That's up to you, Angela said. I can't tell you how to run your business or live your life. But my mom has worked for you for 5 years, Mr. Moore. She's loyal, hardworking, and honest. She's never asked you for anything until she was desperate. And even then, she was apologizing for bothering you. Angela stood, brushing off her jeans. You asked me what I wanted. I don't want money or fame or connections. I want you to see the people you've stopped seeing. That's my first wish. Gerard didn't sleep that night. He lay in his king-sized bed, in his climate-controlled penthouse, staring at the ceiling. His feet still ached. His back hurt from the uncomfortable subway seats. But what kept him awake was the memory of Celine's tiny apartment, of Mrs. Chen's tired smile, of Marcus's determination despite impossible odds. At 6 a.m., he made a call. Gerard? It's Saturday. This better be his CFO started. I want a complete review of our wage structure. Every position, every location. On my desk Monday morning. What? What? Because I'm asking for the details on our benefits package. Specifically, how much we contribute to employee health care. Over the next week, Gerard dove into the operational details of his company in a way he never had before. He'd always focus on the big picture, acquisitions, stock prices, quarterly earnings. Now, he looked at the individuals. The cleaning staff at his buildings made $15 an hour. No benefits, no paid time off. His customer service representatives, many working from home in circumstances he could now imagine too clearly, made $17 an hour. Limited health care. A PTO policy so restrictive most never used it. The warehouse workers, the drivers, the maintenance staff, all paid competitive wages that, when Gerard actually did the math, left them one emergency away for financial disaster. He called Angela 2 weeks after their day together. "I've been thinking about your wish," he said, and I'm making changes. Minimum wage across all my companies is now $25 an hour. Full healthcare coverage, including dental and vision. For weeks paid vacation, starting immediately, not after a year. Childcare subsidies. An emergency fund for employees facing unexpected hardships. There was silence on the other end. Then, "Mr. Moore, that must cost millions." "Tens of millions annually," Gerard confirmed. "But I ran the numbers. My company will still be profitable. I'll still be a billionaire. I just won't be quite as much of one. And the people who actually do the work, they'll be able to afford eggs and heat at the same time." He could hear Angela smile through the phone. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I'm also establishing a foundation. For kids like you. Smart, hardworking, facing medical crises they can't afford. I'm seeding it with $100 million. I want you on the board. I'm 17. You'll be 18 soon, and you've already proven you understand what matters more than any of my MBA executives." Gerard paused. "That was one wish, Angela. You have 2 more. I'm almost afraid to ask what they'll be." "You should be," Angela said, and he could hear the laughter at her voice. "I've been thinking about wish number 2. Can we meet next week?" They met at the same coffee shop. Angela arrived with a folder thick with papers, the kind of preparation that reminded Gerard of himself in his early days, before wealth had made everything easy. "Before I tell you my second wish, I need to show you something," Angela said, spreading documents across the table. "Do you recognize this company?" Gerard looked at the logo. TechSphere Solutions. One of my competitors. Midsize, been trying to compete in the cloud services space. "Why?" "Because 6 months ago, you tried to acquire them. They refused to sell and wanted to stay independent." Gerard shrugged. "It happens. Do you know what happened after that?" Angela pulled out more papers, news articles, financial reports, internal memos she'd somehow obtained. "Your company immediately launched a competing product, undercut their prices, and leveraged your partnerships to shut them out of major contracts. You basically declared war." Gerard shifted uncomfortably. "That's business, Angela. Competitive strategy." TechSphere Solutions employed 847 people, Angela continued. "When you launched your attack, they had to do layoffs. 312 people lost their jobs. One of them was Robert Chun, Mrs. Chin's husband. Remember her? The woman I introduced you to? Her husband killed himself 3 weeks after losing that job. He'd been the family's primary earner, and he couldn't handle the shame of not being able to provide." The words landed like a punch. Gerard remembered Mrs. Chun, the tired woman with kind eyes who'd offered them tea in her crowded apartment. I had no idea. How could you?" Angela's voice was gentle but firm. "You don't think about the people affected by your decisions. You think about market share and profit margins and winning. But every decision you make ripples outward. People lose jobs, lose homes, lose hope. Sometimes they lose their lives." Gerard felt sick. "What do you want me to do?" "I can't bring him back." "No, but you can stop destroying companies just because they won't sell to you. Which brings me to my second wish." Angela leaned forward. "I wish for you to mentor someone." "What?" TechSphere Solutions is still limping along. The CEO is a woman named Sandra Martinez. She's brilliant, innovative, and she's trying to keep her company alive to save the jobs of the people who weren't laid off. My second wish is for you to mentor her. Teach her what you know. Help her compete. Really compete." Gerard stared at her. "You want me to help my competitor? That's insane." "Is it?" You're so far ahead of tech sphere that they'll never actually threaten you. But you could help them survive. You could help those 535 remaining employees keep their jobs. And maybe, just maybe, you could learn that business doesn't have to be a zero-sum game. You continue to surprise me, Gerard said slowly. Most people would ask for something for themselves. I have everything I need, Angela replied. You gave me my life back. Now I'm asking you to use your gifts to build up instead of tear down. Just once. See how it feels. Sandra Martinez was suspicious when Gerard Moore called requesting a meeting. It wouldn't be. He'd spent the better part of a year trying to crush her company. Is this about another acquisition attempt? She asked warily, sitting across from him in a neutral conference room. No, this is about me offering to help you compete against me. He explained Angela's wish, leaving nothing out. Sandra listened with increasing disbelief. Let me get this straight. A teenage girl asked you to mentor me, and you agreed? She's not just any teenage girl, Gerard said. She's the smartest person I've met in years, and she has an annoying habit of being right about things I don't want to hear. Over the next 6 months, Gerard found himself doing something he'd never done before, rooting for a competitor. He reviewed Sandra's business plans, introduced her to contacts, advised her on strategy. He taught her the lessons he'd learned over 20 years, the hard-won knowledge that had built his empire. And something unexpected happened. Sandra taught him back. She showed him how to run a company that valued people over pure profit, how to make decisions that prioritized long-term sustainability over quarterly earnings, how to build a culture where employees felt valued and invested. TechSphere didn't just survive, it began to thrive. Sandra used Gerard's mentorship to carve out a niche, focusing on mid-sized businesses that the big players ignored. She rehired some of the laid-off workers. The company stabilized, then grew. You're good at this, Sandra said during one of their monthly meetings. The teaching part. Have you ever thought about doing it more formally? What do you mean? I mean, there are 1,000 entrepreneurs out there trying to build something meaningful, and they're all making the same mistakes you could help them avoid. What if that was your legacy? Not just another $1 billion, but a generation of business leaders who know how to build responsibly. The idea planted itself in Gerard's mind and grew. He started small, a lecture at Columbia Business School, then a series of workshops for startup founders, then a full mentorship program, selecting 10 promising entrepreneurs each year to personally guide. He found himself energized in a way he hadn't been in years. Building his own empire had become routine, mechanical, but helping others build theirs? That felt new, vital, important. Angela called him 6 months into the mentorship program. How's Sandra? She asked. Thriving. TechSphere just landed a major contract. She's talking about hiring another 100 people. Gerard paused. You were right. Again, it feels better to build up than tear down. I'm glad. He could hear the smile in her voice. You ready for wish number 3? I'm terrified of wish number 3. Good. Let's meet next week. I'm finishing high school early. Turns out almost dying make you very focused on your education. I'll be starting college in the fall. Congratulations. Where? That depends on wish number 3, Angela said mysteriously. They met at the hospital where Angela had been treated, in the same room where she'd been when Gerard first met her. Angela had requested the location specifically. Sentimental? Gerard asked, settling into the chair he'd sat in a year ago. Purposeful, Angela corrected. She looked different now, healthy, confident, about to turn 18. But her eyes still held that same penetrating intelligence that had first surprised him. Do you remember what you said when you offered me the 3 wishes? I said they couldn't be for money directly. Right. But you never said they couldn't create money. Just not for me. Angela pulled out her phone and showed him a presentation. This is my 3rd wish. I wish for you to invest $50 million in a new company. One that I'm going to run. Gerard leaned forward, intrigued. Go on. It's called Second Chance Pharmaceuticals. The business model is simple. We identify promising medical treatments that could help people but aren't profitable enough for big pharmaceutical companies to pursue. We fund the research, develop the treatments, and then distribute them at cost. No profit margin, just help. She clicked through slides showing market analysis, potential treatments, and organizational structure. It was impressive, The work of someone far older than 17. The experimental treatment that saved my life. Angela continued. It works. It could help thousands of people. But the pharmaceutical company that developed it shelved it after the trial because they couldn't justify the ongoing investment. Too small a market, too expensive to produce, not enough profit potential. There are dozens of treatments like that, maybe hundreds. You want to turn unprofitable medical research into a sustainable business model, Gerard said slowly. I want to save lives that the current system decides aren't worth saving. Angela corrected. The $50 million is seed money. I've already talked to researchers, medical professionals, and patient advocacy groups. We can make this work, but I need someone with your business expertise and connections. I need you as a partner, not just an investor. Gerard sat back, studying the young woman before him. A year ago, she'd been dying in a hospital bed. Now, she was proposing a radical reimagining of pharmaceutical development. You understand that even with $50 million, this company probably won't be profitable, at least not in any traditional sense. Understand that profit isn't the only measure of success, Angela said. You taught me that. Well, my first wish taught you that. And then you taught me by example. I never agreed to, Gerard started, then stopped. Because he had agreed, hadn't he? The moment he accepted Angela's first wish, the moment he spent that day living on minimum wage, he'd started down a path that inevitably led here. Why do I feel like I've been manipulated? He asked, but he was smiling. Because you have been, Angela said cheerfully, but in a good way. A year ago, you were a billionaire who'd forgotten what money was for. Now you're a billionaire who's remembering. My 3 wishes weren't just about changing your behavior. They were about changing your heart. And you think your 3rd wish will complete that transformation? I think my 3rd wish will give you a purpose beyond accumulation, Angela said seriously. You have more money than you could spend in 10 lifetimes. What if the last lifetime was about spending it on something that matters? Gerard more shocked the business world when he announced his new venture. Tech billionaire pivots to pharmaceutical reform. The headlines read. Critics called it a midlife crisis. Supporters called it visionary. Gerard didn't care what they called it. Second Chance Pharmaceuticals launched with $50 million in funding and a mission statement that made Wall Street analysts shake their heads. Profit is not our purpose. Lives are. Angela deferred her college admission for a year to serve as COO, with the understanding she'd attend part-time once the company was established. Gerard served as CEO and primary investor, leveraging every contact and skill he'd accumulated over 20 years. The first treatment they funded was the leukemia therapy that had saved Angela's life. Within 18 months, they'd made it available to 30 hospitals across the country. The cost to patients, whatever their insurance would cover, and if they had no insurance, nothing. The second treatment addressed a rare genetic disorder affecting children. Big Pharma had abandoned research because the patient population was too small. Second Chance picked it up and, 3 years later, gave 50 families hope where there had been none. By year 5, Second Chance Pharmaceuticals had funded 12 different treatments, helped over 10,000 patients, and still operated at a substantial loss. Gerard covered the shortfall from his personal wealth without a second thought. Do you regret it? Angela asked one day, now 23 and finishing her biology degree while running the company part-time. You've invested over $300 million in 5 years. That's real money, even for you. They were in the company's modest offices in Brooklyn, a far cry from Gerard's penthouse headquarters. He looked around at the walls covered with photos of patients they'd helped, letters from families expressing gratitude. You know what I regret? Gerard said, I regret the 30 years I spent before I met you, thinking success was measured in zeros on a balance sheet. I regret every company I crushed, every person I didn't see, every dollar I spent on things that didn't matter. He turned to look at her. You asked me for 3 wishes, but you gave me something far more valuable. You gave me a mirror that showed me who I'd become, and then you gave me a path to becoming someone better. That's very poetic, Angela said with a smile. But you did the hard part. I just pointed the direction. You walked the path. We walked it, Gerard corrected. This company is as much yours as mine. Gerard Moore stood at the podium at Columbia University, looking out at a sea of graduating medical students. Angela Trent sat in the front row, about to receive her MD, having completed medical school in 4 years while helping run Second Chance Pharmaceuticals. I was asked to speak today about success, Gerard began. For most of my life, I would have defined success as wealth, power, market dominance. I built an empire on that definition, and I was miserable, though I didn't know it. He paused, letting his eyes find Angela. 8 years ago, a dying teenage girl asked me for 3 wishes. But her wishes weren't about what I could give her. They were about what she could give me. The first wish taught me empathy. The second taught me collaboration. The third gave me purpose. The speech was short. Gerard had learned that the most important messages didn't need elaborate explanation. When he finished, the applause was polite but confused. These students had come to hear business advice, not philosophy. But afterward, as Angela joined him on stage to receive a special recognition award for her work with Second Chance Pharmaceuticals, Gerard felt something he'd never felt during any of his previous achievements: contentment. "Thank you," Angela said, accepting the award. "But I want to be clear about something. Second Chance Pharmaceuticals exists because Mr. Moore was willing to listen to a scared teenager with big ideas. It exists because he was willing to change. And most importantly, it exists because he learned that true wealth isn't what you accumulate, it's what you give away." Later, at the reception, Celine Trent approached Gerard. She still worked for him, though her role had evolved. Now she managed his household staff with fair wages, full benefits, and genuine respect. Her apartment had upgraded too. Gerard had quietly purchased a 3-bedroom condo in a good neighborhood and rented it to her for exactly what she'd been paying for the studio. "I never properly thank you," Celine said, "for saving my daughter's life." "Your daughter saved mine," Gerard replied honestly. "I just didn't know it was dying until she showed me." As the reception wound down, Gerard found Angela standing alone on the balcony, looking out over the city. "Thinking about the future, Dr. Trent?" he asked, joining her. "Thinking about those 3 wishes," Angela said. "About how scared I was when I made the first one. I didn't know if you'd be offended, or if you'd dismiss me as some naive kid." "I was offended," Gerard admitted, "for about 5 minutes. Then I realized you'd done something no one else had dared to do. Told me the truth about myself. And now..." Angela turned to face him. "Was I right? Did the wishes work?" Gerard thought about the question seriously. His net worth had actually increased despite his charitable work. Turns out that treating employees well and investing in ethical businesses was good for long-term returns. But more importantly, he woke up each morning excited about the work, about the lives being changed, about the difference he could make. "You know what the most remarkable thing is?" he said finally. "You only used 3 wishes, but they keep giving. Every person's second chance helps. Every employee in my company who can afford health care, every entrepreneur I mentor, they all exist because you asked me to spend 1 day living on minimum wage. That one wish rippled out into thousands of lives changed." "That was the point," Angela said softly. "I didn't just want to change my life. I wanted to change how you saw life. Because someone with your resources, with your abilities, if you could just see people again, really see them, you could change the world." Gerard corrected. "We can change the world. You're stuck with me as a business partner for life now." Angela laughed. "There are worse fates. Though I reserve the right to make you live on minimum wage again if your empathy starts slipping." "Deal," Gerard said, and he meant it. As they stood there, watching the sun set over New York City, Gerard Moore reflected on the strange journey that had brought him here. He'd started as a man who had everything and felt nothing. Now he had slightly less of everything and felt more than he'd ever imagined possible. All because a dying girl had been brave enough to ask for the one thing he'd thought he couldn't give, his humanity. And in teaching him to see others, she'd taught him to see himself. The 3 wishes had changed everything. But the greatest gift wasn't what Angela had wished for. It was what she'd wished for. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that kindness is never wasted and that even broken path can lead to beautiful places and change of lives, please like this video, Share it with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe to Kindness Arena, because your support keeps stories like this alive and spreading. Tell us in the comment what you would have done differently if you were the millionaire. Would you have granted her wishes? Or has a stranger's kindness ever changed your life in ways you didn't expect? We'd love to hear your story.